Sometimes you don't hate people. You just feel something is off when you're around them. And later, your mind replays every word you said, searching for what went wrong. You start questioning yourself, like why couldn't I just act normal? After social moments, you don't feel tired in your body. You feel tired in your mind. Slowly, you begin to avoid people without even realizing why. It's not them you're running from, it's the version of you that appears around them. In conversations, you start filtering yourself, choosing what sounds acceptable. Even your laughter becomes controlled, like you're adjusting it for approval. And silence starts feeling safer than speaking. Even when you have something to say, you notice something strange. You don't feel like one consistent person anymore. After every interaction, you feel mentally drained, like you were performing, not living. Around different people, you become different versions without planning it. And slowly, you lose track of which version is actually you. You start feeling smaller in certain spaces, even when no one is judging you. It's like your mind is always watching yourself, even while you're talking. And that constant self-monitoring quietly exhausts you. You begin to believe you are just not social. But that's not the full truth, because sometimes you do want connection. You just don't want to lose yourself. You adapt so much in conversations that your real reactions get buried. And without realizing it, you start living more as a response than a person. Your brain is not just reacting to people, it is constantly scanning for social danger. Even small signs of judgment feel bigger in your mind than they really are. Without realizing it, you start adjusting yourself before anything even happens. It becomes automatic, like a mask your brain puts on without asking you. And every time nothing bad happens, your brain thinks the mask worked. So it keeps repeating the same behavior again and again. Over time, you stop noticing the mask because it starts feeling like your real face. But deep inside, something still feels off, like you are not fully present. This is not weakness. It is your brain trying to protect you from rejection. A part of your brain reacts to social threat as if it were a real danger. And at the same time, your mind starts overthinking every word before you speak. So instead of just talking, you begin calculating every response. What to say, how it sounds, how they might react, all at once. And this creates a loop: awareness, adjustment, temporary safety, and repetition. Slowly, your natural self-expression gets replaced by controlled behavior. The more you control yourself, the more unnatural you begin to feel. Because your brain slowly forgets what real even feels like. So even when you are alone, the monitoring doesn't fully stop. You start observing yourself even in silence, like you are still being watched. And that is where confusion begins, between who you are and who you perform. But here's what most people don't realize. This pattern didn't come from nowhere. At some point, being fully yourself didn't feel safe enough. Maybe you were judged, misunderstood, or quietly ignored. So your brain made a small adjustment just to protect you. Next time, be a little different. And it worked. You became easier to accept, easier to fit in. But slowly, that adjustment stopped being a choice and became automatic. Now your brain runs that same pattern even when there is no real threat. That's why you feel it everywhere, not just in stressful situations. You're not broken, you're just running an old survival strategy. And survival patterns don't disappear just because they're no longer needed. They repeat until your brain learns something new. So the goal isn't to force yourself to change overnight, it's to gently show your brain that it doesn't need to protect you like this anymore. And that starts with something simple: noticing the shift, not the situation, but the moment you begin to change yourself, when your tone adjusts, when your body tightens, when you hesitate. That awareness alone creates space between you and the pattern. And in that small space, the automatic response begins to weaken. Not instantly, but enough for something more real to slowly appear. Once you notice the shift, The next step is not to fix it immediately. The urge to correct yourself instantly is part of the same pattern. Instead, you start reducing how much you're trying to manage everything. Right now, your brain believes control is what prevents rejection. So it keeps tightening your behavior, trying to keep you safe. But safety built on control always feels exhausting. So instead, you allow small imperfections in how you show up. Maybe your words aren't perfect. Maybe your tone isn't ideal. And nothing bad happens. That moment matters more than it seems. Because your brain expected rejection, but it didn't come. This is where learning begins. When expectation breaks, your brain starts updating itself. Slowly, it begins to realize it doesn't need that much control. And with each small experience, that belief becomes weaker. Then you start anchoring yourself to something real, not a perfect version of you, just something simple and honest, like being someone who speaks truthfully, even when it feels quiet. This gives your identity something stable inside the moment. So instead of shifting completely in every situation, you stay partially grounded. And over time, that grounded part becomes stronger than the pattern. You also learn to allow small discomfort without immediately fixing because your brain only learns safety when discomfort doesn't break you. When you stop escaping discomfort, something subtle begins to change. The same situations start to feel slightly less intense than before. Not because people changed, but because your reaction did. Your brain slowly begins to realize this isn't actually dangerous. And gradually, the need to constantly adjust yourself starts to fade. You don't stop being aware, but the awareness becomes quieter. It shifts from pressure to simple observation. You start noticing your thoughts without immediately reacting to them. And that creates a different kind of space inside you, a space where you can exist without performing. Your identity begins to feel less fragmented. Those different versions of you slowly start coming back together. Not perfectly, but enough to feel consistent again. You start responding instead of reacting. Speaking becomes simpler, not easier, just more natural, and silence no longer feels like something you need to fix. It becomes something you can sit in without tension. That's when connection starts to feel different too. Not forced, not managed, just happening. And for the first time, you feel present, not monitored. At some point, you realize you were never actually lost. You were just covered by layers of adjustment. And those layers slowly begin to fall away. Not all at once, but quietly, over time. You stop trying to control how you're seen and start focusing more on how you feel instead. The mask becomes something optional, not necessary, something you can use, but no longer depend on. Social moments start to feel lighter, less heavy to carry, because you're no longer managing yourself the entire time. You become okay with not being fully understood because you finally understand yourself a little more. And that changes everything. The pressure to explain yourself slowly disappears. The fear of judgment loses its intensity, and silence starts to feel safe instead of uncomfortable. You're no longer performing in your own life. You're just existing as you are. And maybe that's what this was always about. Not becoming someone new, but finally not leaving yourself behind.